From sales and marketing executive to now international speaker and social entrepreneur, tune in to the Activation Hour podcast as we share with friends and influencers the activation required to make an impact in sales, marketing, and the marketplace. I'm your host, Melissa D. White, the Activation Specialist, CEO, corporate trainer, and nonprofit founder. We're getting real about personal and professional moments that push us to our purpose at work and in the world. Now, let's get activated. Hello, and welcome back for another episode of the Activation Hour podcast, looking for purpose at work and in the world. This is season 2, our season of unlearning. I'm your host, Melissa D. White, executive coach, leadership advocate, youth community organizer, and all these other crazy things. But to do all of that, it really takes us being willing to do the work and unlearn old habits and learn new ways of navigating purpose. So this season, I've brought on some amazing guests that not only help us understand some of the personal but professional challenges and things we have to learn in order to be even better in showing up for others and honestly ourselves. This particular topic hit home for me, and our guest today, whether she knows it or not, her post really got me through this ugly thing called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, there's a lot of myths around what it is, and I'll just simply tell you, it's just that it's that feeling of being a fraud. And our guest today, Vanessa Parker, absolutely stands on the principle that you are not a fraud. Hence today's topic. When following her movement, as I call it, on social media to empower women, I also want to dispel the myth that imposter syndrome is not just about women in business. It could be men, women, any one of us can fall subject to it. And so we'll dig deep in defining what it is, how it gets in the way of our mental health and clarity in building our businesses and our professional development. And so with that, I want to welcome my guest today, Vanessa Parker, the pink boss, entrepreneur, mother, wife, foodie, and one crazy businesswoman. Welcome to the Activation Hour. Hey, Vanessa. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, whether you know it or not, I just have to say personally from me, your posts always come right on time. And your messages, they are so therapeutic. And when I saw not only the movement, but even the shirts and the slogans like I'm not a fraud and just so empowering, it's necessary. So thank you for putting that in the atmosphere.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And you know, sometimes you post things and you don't know if it's going to be received. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. So let me tell my audience and the world a little bit more about who you are. Vanessa is a startup business coach, speaker, and one amazing mompreneur with over 10 years of experience in building and losing it all and starting all over again. She promised herself that she would not glamorize entrepreneurship, and she really does keep the process very real. Her mission and purpose is to equip women to use their passions and skills to generate an income that will allow them flexibility to do what they love every single day. Being a boss is not a one-size-fits-all formula. You can be a boss, building a side hustle, a career, or working as a full-time entrepreneur. Pink Boss is an online resource to help navigate the waters of entrepreneurship. They do this by highlighting other bosses and sharing their stories of success. Check out her blog and learn more and follow Vanessa at the Pink Boss on Instagram and also on her webpage, which we'll display in our show notes today. So Vanessa, I have to jump in and ask, before even seeing this message about imposter syndrome, what got my attention about your message before that was just taking the shame away from going back to work as an entrepreneur or a bosspreneur. And so tell us a little bit about that messaging and how you shifted to now advocate and helping others get rid of imposter syndrome.
Yes. So job shaming.
Job shaming. Yeah.
Especially right now, everything is about being an entrepreneur. You got all these entrepreneurial shows like Shark Tank and these pitch competitions and things. All those things are great, but everyone is not built or made for full-time entrepreneurship. I do believe that everyone should have additional streams of income. So if you are working for someone, having an additional stream, because you never know what might happen. But I am not a job shamer. I think that so the decision to go back to work for us is our business was not generating the income. We had to close that business down. I had just had a daughter, and we needed insurance. We needed income. The reality of the world and the recession that was going on, our business wasn't recession proof. And when I went back to work, I felt like I failed. And I had not been in corporate America before LinkedIn wasn't as popular. So when I went back to work, I thought, no one knows about Pink Boss. I'm just going to go to this job and, do this project manager job. And within 2 weeks, I had a young lady meet me in the break room saying, "Hey, can you look at my business plan?" And I was thinking, why does she know to ask me that? Long story short, after meeting with her at lunch, I met with another coworker. I come to find out they went to my LinkedIn page, and LinkedIn had all of my Pink Boss and business consulting information.
Wow.
So I ended up just focusing on women that had full-time jobs that wanted to start a business because I thought it was important. Now side hustle and those things are common buzzwords, but there was a time when having a side hustle or side gig was not something that most people talked about.
That is so true. I've just recently heard of the term, I don't know how old or new it is, but intrapreneur.
Yeah.
That's someone who works a full-time job while still building their entrepreneurial endeavors. And that to me says at least society understands and recognizes that this is a very real segment of the population that needs to be recognized and given some tools and resources.
I agree.
Yeah. So in shifting from you had that event occur where obviously entrepreneurship just followed you even into the workplace with that. Tell us about why imposter syndrome became important to you and adding that to your message.
So I have been a public speaker for over 10 years now. And every time I would prepare for a speaking engagement, I would always prepare for someone to call my BS, or a heckler, or someone to say, I didn't know what I was talking about. So I was with my best friend one day and I was telling her that I was preparing and I always prepare for this kind of interaction. And she's like, that's the imposter syndrome. I had never heard that term before. So for me, it was a feeling that I had, but a term that I never knew existed. So I went back home and I Googled it and I found so much research and realized I wasn't alone. So then I started asking all of my friends, coworkers, did they feel this thing that I was feeling? And they did. I realized at the time, again, another buzzword. Now you hear imposter syndrome a lot, but you did not hear that word 6 years ago. So I decided then that I wanted to start talking about it. So I started leading talks about it. And then because of that, people started asking me to lead workshops. In 2017, what really pushed me is in 2017, someone sent me a clip of Viola Davis. And Viola Davis had an Oscar in her hand. Soon as she won the Oscar for Fences, she walked off the stage and an ABC correspondent asked her how she felt. With the Oscar in hand, she said, "I feel like a fraud." And I knew then that this is something that I wanted to lead the charge in, or at least start conversations, because the Oscars is the epitome of excellence for actors and actresses. For her to hold one in her hand and feel like a fraud let me know that this is something that needs to be talked about. And so that's what kind of catapulted me really leading the charge on talking about imposter syndrome.
Wow. Just the imagery of that. I haven't seen that clip, but I mean, she's amazing. Come on, that's Annalise Keating. Like
Right.
for Annalise Keating to even admit, like to say, I feel like a fraud. But I mean, how brave is that to say it out loud
Right.
on a world stage? And but how many of us feel that and can't vocalize it?
Right.
So how important is it to call this out? Like what tips do you have to first even recognize that you may be suffering or dealing with imposter syndrome?
So most of us have a lot of negative talk. So about 70% of the talk that you have to yourself is negative. So one of the symptoms is listening to that negative narrative that you have in your head. I am not enough. I don't belong. I don't deserve. Those kind of things and that negative talk, if that's something that you can identify with and you know it holds you back from opportunity, especially as an entrepreneur, then you're probably dealing with the imposter syndrome. Self-doubt, doubting if you can even achieve things. For example, if you're an entrepreneur and you've done 5 years of entrepreneurship, you've been building websites, doing graphic design, and then all of a sudden you get a major contract with the largest company that you've ever worked with. The first thought is, do they know that I'm a mom and pop company? Do they know that I've only done this amount of work? It's like you kind of discount all of the success that you've made over the time because of this one contract. And that right there is another reason why a lot of entrepreneurs don't take certain opportunities, or they hold themselves in certain opportunities. Another thing is shrinking. So if someone gives you a compliment or gives you an award or says how amazing you are, and the first reaction is to shrink or to step back or say, that was nothing, and to discount your achievements, that is another clear identifier that you have imposter syndrome. Other thing,
Wow.
you are working. It's not taking more responsibilities at your employer. Or as an entrepreneur, you don't take on more responsibilities or certain contracts because you're afraid you're going to be found out, that people are going to find out that you don't know as much as you think you know.
I'm processing this and I'm like doing my own mental checklist. Like, wait, have I done that? Yeah, I've done that. The last one, especially of being afraid that people will find out you don't know as much as you feel like you know. What are maybe some practical things to maybe call our own selves out? Because this is the thing about it. It's self-talk. It's in our own head. It's not out loud. Our friends can't call us out on it. And so how do you call yourself out, Vanessa?
Yeah. So first thing is you got to change the narrative. You got to change what you say to yourself. And, I didn't believe in affirmations and those things years ago until I found myself in a depressed kind of state, and I had to get myself out of that. And affirmations and meditation are what got me there. So affirmations and changing the negative talk that you have is super, super important, because if 70% of the things that we say are negative, we believe those things, right? And so before anyone else can believe in you or you can excel, propel your business, you've got to believe that you deserve it. And if you don't feel that you deserve it, no matter what I talk about on this call, it's not going to matter. So the first step is to change that narrative that you have. Also is another way that you can combat imposter syndrome is to create an anti-fraud box. So or a jar or something that can hold some information. So in that box could have all the accomplishments you've made. So your podcast, this is an amazing podcast. I was able to listen to some of your other segments. Those comments that people left about you, copy those, put them in a box. Accomplishments that you've made, you've been in any magazines or, large contracts your company has made, or something as simple as you launched your website, or all those things that we don't celebrate those wins, put those in a box. So anytime you're feeling like an imposter or feeling like you don't know or you don't belong, you can open that box up and you can start reminding yourself. Because we're so busy moving from one thing to the next thing to the next thing that we don't celebrate those small things, or we forget, right? We forget that you stood on stage and spoke at this event because it was 5 years ago. But just because it was 5 years ago doesn't mean it's not relevant today. There's no expiration in that. Another thing is to figure out your triggers. What triggered your imposter feeling? So I challenge anyone that's listening to this call to think about a time that you felt like an imposter. a time that you shrank, a time that someone said something to you or you didn't take an opportunity, or that feeling that you had. Think about that time and think about what triggered it. What triggered that feeling? And that way you can be prepared if you're in that situation again. For example, a lot of times that's triggered by a life change, a divorce, a marriage, a new job, a layoff. If you're experiencing those things, you know that imposter syndrome could typically be a trigger in that life phase. So you need to beef up and pour more into yourself. Get that box back out. So if you know that those are triggers, it's easier for you to combat at that time.
Wow, this is all so good and practical. Guys, don't worry. I have my notes on standby. You will get all of this in the show notes. Number one, change the narrative, change the story you're telling yourself. Number two, anti-fraud jar, which I love that idea. I can't wait to really implement that, which I say it out loud, but it's something about having a place you can go grab from when necessary, to help combat that. And you're so right, Vanessa. We, especially as busy women, if others listening are anything like us, they're like, okay, check that off the list and on to the next thing. And there's absolutely no pauses, breaks, or speed bumps, right?
Right.
So being intentional about celebrating, and I put a star by that because I know I don't celebrate. And so that means so much. I could even add to that. One thing a friend told me to do, Vanessa, was, hey, go back and look at your social media. That's why I love the memories so much that pop up.
Yes.
And she said, marker that. And then when it pops up, I'm like, oh, wow, I did do that. And share it, but sit in it. Sit in it and so take that in, breathe it in, and don't forget it. And then the triggers. That's so important. I love journaling. I found out a little tidbit about you that you like are obsessed with journals and fun, pretty journals. And that is important that we journal. One of my favorites is morning pages and night pages. So I'm an avid journaler and writer. And it's really just what I call a brain dump. Like, hey, this is what triggered me today. And then I go back to my list and say, okay, what scriptures or what affirmations can I equate to that to cancel it out? And so journaling helps tremendously in that, to call myself out on paper. At least when it's on paper, I was like, I can't argue with what I just wrote down. So that's really good. I'm going to share some statistics and some information I got. I found a fairly recent article in Time magazine as I did my research about imposter syndrome. And much like you and your experience, I remember my first year as a coach. I'm in my fourth year now as executive coach. And I remember like everybody's a coach. Why in the world am I out here calling myself that? Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to do this in the first place. Someone told me like that I would be really good at it. And it just felt weird. It felt weird to call myself that. And like you, I Googled the term. And so I went back, and there is more information now than ever before. But Time Magazine has an article called Yes, Imposter Syndrome is Real. And here's some stats. I want to hear your thoughts when I share this information from your perspective. The first one says it comes from people who are perfectionists.
Yes.
Perfectionists set extremely high expectations for themselves. And even if they meet 99% of their goals, they're going to feel like failures. Any small mistake will make them question their own competence. Let's talk about perfectionists, Vanessa.
Yes. Perfectionism is one of the main culprits of imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if some people are listening and are like, I don't have imposter syndrome, being a perfectionist and chasing perfection is not a true thing. It's not perfect, is not a real thing. If we really think about us as humans and we set ourselves up for failure. And additional research that I've seen is imposter syndrome really starts in your childhood. And a lot of times it's because us as parents, and I'm guilty of this, I'm trying to do better because I don't want my daughter or my kids to be raised like this. But when we teach them that they have to be perfect, we don't allow them to make mistakes, or we only praise them if they make A's and don't praise them, or at least praise their effort if they are struggling in a subject. Well, what happens is you're teaching them that they're not good enough unless they make the A. Everyone is not an A student. It's just the reality of the world, right? Everyone's not going to build a Fortune 500 company, but your level of success for your business may be $5,000 a month. And that is okay for you. But because you're chasing this perfectionism, or you're chasing and comparing to other people, you think that your goal should be $100,000 a month. And that's a different kind of business, right? You attack business different if you're going after 5,000 and if you're going after 100,000. And so chasing that perfectionism and comparing yourself to people really, really is a culprit in imposter syndrome. And it really starts in our childhood and how we teach people to praise and praise results and not effort.
That's so big. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening, but I can think of, I mean, that's how we're taught, and it's passed down. It's a dichotomy that is just learned. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. Here, you ready for the second one? They said,
Yeah.
experts feel the need to know every piece of information before they start a project and constantly look for new certifications and more training to improve their skills. Does this sound familiar to some of you all, habitual learners and not executing? They won't apply for a job if they don't meet all the criteria in the posting, and they might be hesitant to ask a question in class or speak up in meetings at work because they're afraid of looking stupid if they don't already know the answer. Talk about the experts, Vanessa.
Yes. I just read a book that it's called Being Okay with Not Knowing. And I think that we are in a society that we are not okay with not knowing something, or at least putting it out there that we not know something. As an expert doesn't mean I'm an expert in all things, right? And especially as entrepreneurs, we go into these different lanes of business. Let's say coaching. Just because you're great, you're a business coach doesn't mean that you're a financial coach. It doesn't mean that, or there's a piece of coaching that you really identify that you do well at. We don't want to say that we don't know. Yes, I think imposter syndrome and the expert thing to me is also because we are not okay with being new at something. I've been talking about imposter syndrome for years, and every time I do a workshop with a group of people, I always ask, when do they feel like an imposter? Oftentimes it's when they were looking for a job. So either there was a layoff or they left a job and they were looking for a new job. So what you said was true. You look at a job description, and I know this to be true for more women than for men. You look at a job description and it may say, all these 12 things, and only 10 of those things I fit. I won't apply because I don't meet all 12, right? That does not mean I'm not great at that job. It just means that I don't have those two skills. Doesn't mean I shouldn't apply, right? So I think that part too, and that goes back to that perfectionism, that goes back to that not knowing. A lot of times we don't go for new jobs or for new contracts for your business because we are not okay with being new at things. And when people tell you to fake it till you make it, we've heard that term before, right? So you start a business and they say, fake it till you make it. Well, the problem is with that mentality is we continue to keep that mentality 5 years into the business. You mentioned you've been coaching for 4 years. So if you have the fake it till you make it mentality, you're no longer faking it. You have clients, you have success, you've had certifications, you've done your research, you've paid for courses. You're no longer faking it till you make it. But because you've had that mindset and you haven't shifted that mindset, you still feel like a fraud, and where that imposter syndrome comes in. So I think it's important that we learn to be okay with not knowing everything. And 2, realizing that it's okay to be new. When you're starting a new job or starting a new business, even though you may know, let's say you're an accountant. Yes, you may know numbers and you may know how to do a profit and loss statement, but you don't know what an EIN is, and you don't know that you need an LLC. And it's okay because you are new, and we need to be okay with being new at things.
That's good. Be okay with being new. I think I have a lot of theories on why we struggle with that, but I think one of the primary ones is we're in such social media positions everything to look like it happens instantaneously, and that's just not so. And so then when in year one you're not like a 6-figure earner, you get like depressed. And it's like, wait a minute, like it took me years to get to this point, and people don't show you that side. So yeah.
And 6-figure earners, don't get me started on this. That's another podcast. Everyone wants to be a six-figure earner, but you don't know what that expenses look like. That's six figures they might have had in sales sometimes. Or everyone, I'm in these Facebook groups and they post their dashboards, and I had $1,000 day. Okay, well, how much money do they spend in Facebook ads to do that? What product are they selling? Is that product masks right now that are hot because of COVID? Like, there's so many other things that you're comparing yourself to someone, which is another thing I tell people when you're trying to combat imposter syndrome, stop the comparison trap. In business, you tend to follow everyone in your industry. Well, why is that a bad thing? Because you don't put the blinders on. You're worried about what your competitor or who you think is a competitor of yours is doing. You have a course that's $50 and no one signs up. And the young lady who is a business coach that you follow, she has the best graphics ever. You think that she's amazing. Her lives are always on point. She has a course for $1,500 and she said she's sold out. And then you feel bad because you could sell $50. One, you don't know her target. Two, she could be lying.
Right.
Three, you don't know what money she spent to get those people. So it's just a whole lot of things that we're comparing our middle to someone's outside. You don't know what they got going on or what's happening behind the scenes in their business.
That's so true. We have to call ourselves out on that. You know, I honestly went through a season, Vanessa, particularly like last year when I was at my lowest point. I had to cut myself from social media and truly like even maybe mute people that I had great love and admiration for their business, but it was me checking myself, because there's a difference between admiring and comparing. And it's like, no, until I can sort my own stuff out, then it's not healthy to be in this space.
Yes. And control your feed. Unfollow.
We have control, but it feels uncontrollable because that's a whole nother thing too about screen addictions and all of that stuff. But it's you have to set clear intent. I tell my clients, one of the first things when we go through our program is we go through your phone and look at screen time. And when you schedule your focus hour so that you're not comparing, put a limit on those things, and that's really holding yourself accountable. Let's check out the next one that they say here in Time Magazine. This is really good. I said, whoa, they are really calling people out bullet point by bullet point. The next one is the natural genius. The natural genius. The natural genius. This is when the natural genius has to struggle or work hard to accomplish something he or she thinks this means that they're not good enough at it. They're used to being good at everything. Their skills usually come easily to them. And when they have to put in a little more extra effort than normal, their brain cells tell them that that's proof that there's an imposter.
Agreed. This happens a lot for students who go to Ivy League schools and athletes. So you're top of your class in your high school, right? So you're comparing people to your high school and maybe your county, but then you go to Harvard, and now Harvard is full of all those top 1 and 2 people, and then you feel like a fraud. You feel like you're not as smart as you think you are. That's definitely one that also shows up too in childhood when you have siblings that have one sibling that is considered a natural genius, meaning that they can kind of get through school and not study a lot. And then they may have siblings that need to study more, that don't get the grades like them. So sometimes they start shrinking to fit in. Studies show that girls in middle school typically are a little bit ahead in boys in academics. And what happens is because middle school is a time where you want to be cool and you typically start relationships, girls start learning to shrink thin. They start saying that being smart is not cool. And they start kind of, the study that I read said that girls will stop studying as hard and stop doing the things that they want to do because to fit in, being smart is not cool. It also happens with athletes. So if you are, at school, you're the best quarterback at school, you're the jock on campus, everyone loves you. Well, then you go off to college and you're in a whole new ballgame. But that goes back to the thing I said about being new and praising effort and not just the result, right? Because it is amazing that you made it that far, but you are going to have to work a little bit harder. So that is definitely another trigger to imposter syndrome. just that natural genius.
Wow, these are really good. Guys, I hope you're listening and you have your notepads out here because we're going to really dispel this thing called imposter syndrome. And as Vanessa says, you're not a fraud. That is like a very powerful affirmation. Really just take time to take that in as you're listening. There's two more bullet points from the Time article, and we're going to tackle the soloist and the Superman and Superwoman right after our break when we come right back. You're tuned into the Activation Hour. Don't go anywhere. Stay connected for our interview with Vanessa Parker. We'll be right back. Are you a manager, trainer, or executive that wants to see maximum results for your team? Well, let me help you with that. Training is for information, but coaching is for results. Learn more about Activation Coaching International and our coaching certification program for business leaders who want to see the best results and even help your team activate their purpose at work and in the world. 65% of people say that working with a coach helped them improve performance at work, and 80% said that coaching helped them improve their self-confidence. What better way to invest in your team than by being a coach through Activation Coaching International? Learn more at bit.ly/ready-to-coach. See our show notes for details. All right. We are taking down this monster called imposter syndrome here. Vanessa has me taking like all these notes here. You guys are going to get some good stuff in the show notes if you're subscribed to our email list. So where we left off was the soloist. So check this one out, Vanessa. It says soloists feel they have to accomplish tasks on their own. And if they need to ask for help, they think that means that they're a failure and a fraud. What do you say about that one?
Yeah, so that's a new one. I have not heard that before as part of imposter syndrome, but it totally makes sense, right? Which a lot of times, especially in our community, we are raised not to ask for help. And I can see that being a major trigger because you feel like a failure because you don't know the thing. But honestly, Melissa, that goes back to all the other ones, right? That goes back to not knowing, and that goes back to being an expert. You can't be an expert at all things. Mm-hmm. You have to know that you're going to need help along this journey of being a parent, of being an entrepreneur. If you knew everything, you wouldn't need anyone. I believe that God, not to get super religious, but I believe that God puts people on earth so that we could interact and need each other. Mm-hmm. If you put me with everything, why would I need anyone else? That's just not how things work. So I could definitely see how that is a trigger for imposter syndrome. But again, going back to being an expert, thinking that you know it all and that you don't need any help.
That's so true. And I mean, totally. Hey, we go there. We talk about the word on this show. And for me, it's scriptural that, they're all gifts in the body. It talks about, the hand and the foot and it's like if the parts of the body despise one another, you wouldn't get anywhere. Your body parts would just be in conflict. You'd be paralyzed. So it's so necessary. Like, hey, if I'm gonna be a foot, then I'm gonna be the best looking foot to walk this thing out on the face of the earth. But just know that and own that. And that's what I love about this particular season of unlearning is in the unlearning, I've been so radically transparent and honest with myself. So that way I can be that way with other people. And now it invites people in new partnerships and relationships because I can say like, I don't know, and with no hesitation, but that takes work. And that's why this season is so personal to me for you guys that are listening. I'm really hoping that you all get there. I want everyone to get there to not be ashamed of this, like to just let it be. The last one, the Superman or the Superwoman, which I think we all feel like that nowadays. It feels that way. But they tend to push themselves to work harder than those around them to prove that they're not an imposter, like they have something to prove. They feel they need to succeed in every aspect of life, at work, in parenting, and as a partner or spouse, and they feel super stressed when they're not accomplishing or dropping the ball on something.
Well, this is all stepping on all of my toes. Superwoman and Superman syndrome. There is a girl. We can do a whole podcast just on that. It is real, and it goes back to being an expert or thinking that you should know everything. Shonda Rhimes, in her book The Year of Yes, said, "Where I am winning at one thing, I am failing at another." And I thought that was very powerful. And if of everything that we talk about in this call, if no one takes anything away but to give yourself some grace, that's what I try to leave any call that I'm on, because I think that grace is reserved and we give it to other people, to our kids, to our family, to our jobs, but we don't give it to ourselves. We are not supposed to be perfect and have everything. There is no way that you could be great at every aspect of your life. There's just no way. And if you find that person, let me know. But I just do not believe that exists. And that superwoman, as a mom, I believe when you become a wife and a mom, somehow you magically think you have this cape that you are supposed to solve everything and be everything. And a lot of times it's your own pressure. Your spouse didn't do it. Your children didn't do it. It was your own pressure that you put on yourself. And you mentioned something earlier about unlearning and being a time of growth. I have learned, especially in this pandemic, that this is a time for self-reflection. And the only way you grow is if you can look in the mirror and look at the ugly part too. And that ugly is ugly.
Mm-hmm.
So that ugly for me was Superwoman syndrome. Wow. And being okay to say that, y'all, I just can't, we're not eating McDonald's tonight. I can't cook, or I can't do that thing, or I can't make that call, or, those things, and making sure that I give myself that grace in the space. I'm not going to win at everything. And I have to be okay with that.
Whew. That was a lot of unpacking. I think I concur with everything you said, particularly in African-American communities and for women of color, that it's almost like it's in our DNA. Like, I just got to do it. I just got to do it all. I have to. And we put the weight of the world on our shoulders, like so much so where literally sometimes I'll even do this with my own mother. I'll just walk up and I'll press her shoulders and do like this, like, put your shoulders down. It's okay. Relax. Yeah. We don't even realize we're walking around like this, intense, and we're carrying it like a breastplate.
Yes. And we carry it proud.
Pride.
We carry it proud until we break, or someone near us breaks. We carry that proud. And I hope in this time of self-reflection that we are okay and non-judgmental to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially, how I learned this, Vanessa, is you talked about the pandemic and how the superwoman syndrome is a thing you had to face for yourself. My ugly was that, I would kind of wear the workaholic thing proudly. And I took pride in, yes, I work a 9-to-5, and yes, I run 2 businesses, and yes, and I do ministry, and it's like, you sound like a crazy person. And it went into overdrive. It got worse when the pandemic happened. And you ever had a moment when you literally feel like you're outside of yourself, watching yourself about to crash?
Yeah.
And so I was outside of myself, watching myself going full speed ahead, and I was not sleeping. I think I went about 4 days with no sleep. And it was almost like I was holding my eyelids open, and I asked myself, like at 4 a.m. during this whole season, and I just screamed. I was like, why can't I stop? And then just this peace, the Holy Spirit or whatever just said, it's control. Because there's so many uncontrolled variables in this season, that the one thing I felt I could control was work. I can't control COVID and the pandemic and the friends and family affected. I can't control. I have limiting things in my business I can control, but I can't control if I can't. I'm a speaker. Like, literally, conferences were getting canceled left and right. travel looked crazy. Like I almost got stuck in one city with, I mean, it was just so, it was madness. So I locked myself in my office for days at a time. And it was almost as if I was saying, hey, you know what? COVID's coming. COVID's at my door. What if COVID gets me? Let me put out as much work as I can in the atmosphere. And I do believe some of that is the imposter of believing that I'm in control all the time.
Well,
And
we're
it's just
not.
so.
We're not. And like you, just what you mentioned, a control. I had a 9 to 5 and I thought at least I can control that because I'm a project manager by trade.
Mm.
So as a project manager, you are the control overseer.
Mhm.
But I was let go last week. So where I thought that was an area of my life that was in control, it's no longer there. You know, talk about some self-reflection and realizing that in this season, it's so many things are so out of control. And that's why to me, imposter syndrome is so important, because if you were already having these doubts and feelings when the world was opened up and we were really busy and full schedules, imagine what people are saying to themselves now, cooped up in the house.
Mm-mm. Now you're alone with your thoughts and you really don't have distractions unless you just Netflixing and binge watching yourself crazy. I don't know.
Watch so much
You
TV.
have to face it. It's time to face it. It's time to really face this thing. So, really to round all of this out, we've called it out. We've even given all of the symptoms a name. Okay. If you need to name them and tackle them down to the ground, then we can do that. But we're gonna shift our focus on celebrating. And that was one of my questions, which we addressed, is how to celebrate. I love the idea of, the jar and pulling something from your jar. Let's talk about support systems as we kind of wrap up this unlearning session here. What support system maybe did you put in place for yourself, or do you recommend to those who are dealing with imposter syndrome?
So a couple of support systems. One, I think that you need support systems in different areas of your life. So your coworkers, right? So if you are working, making sure you have some support at work. Your husband, spouse, and children probably don't want to hear about your work stuff, right? So having an ally, having someone that you know and trust, that you can get some support at work, right? In your business, you need to surround yourself with some other entrepreneurs. Now, it needs to be diverse. It's great to have around startup entrepreneurs if you're a startup entrepreneur, because you're kind of in the same boat. But if you know you want to be at $500,000, and I want you to start looking for an entrepreneur that makes $500,000, because there's a different mindset in a startup and a $500,000 business, or even $1 million business. Now, define your own success. Maybe that's not what you aspire to be, but my point is diversify. Don't just get people who are business coaches or who are all graphic designers. I think it's great to network, but you need to diversify your network and entrepreneurship. I think as entrepreneurs, we jump into just our niche, which I think is great because you can reach across from each other and help each other out. But in order to elevate, you're going to have to diversify that support system. It's very important. Now, for imposter syndrome, I think that could be your girlfriends, that can be coworkers, that can be other friends. It is my mission and goal to create confidence chat groups where you just have a 3 girlfriends, 2 friends that you can text one of your wins to, that everyone can celebrate with you, someone who you know generally cares about your success, small wins, large wins, that you all can have a Google Drive where you just post in some of the wins that you've had. So when you're feeling down, that person can say, no, Vanessa, you are a rock star. Remember when you did whatever? So having that accountability within your confidence, I call them confidence chat groups, but having people that can help build you up, I think is important too.
Those are amazing suggestions. I love what you said about having work support. I've had to learn this, although I'm not a wife and mother. I've also learned, like, my family doesn't understand my work woes or my business woes. And I would get frustrated, like, well, why don't they care? Why should they care? So I had to find like they want me, they want Melissa, the daughter, the granddaughter, the auntie, like they don't, that's who they want. So finding that place at work or within my industry, I think that hit close to home. And the business support, you are phenomenally right. There are levels. There are levels, and every level thinks and moves differently. And finding, and then so when we tell people, well, how, look, go find another group of elevating in your business. And the first thing people said was, well, where? How do you find anything else? Google it. Facebook groups have been a tremendous shift in my business in this season, Vanessa. Like, I knew I wanted to take my podcast to a new level. What did I do? I looked for podcasting groups and I just started engaging. So start showing up. I think not just like looking for it, but showing up for the support. And you'll find that other people will show up when you avail yourself and actually say, hey, I'm over here and I'm ready. I'm ready to be seen. I'm ready to be heard. This is so great. What are your
One more thing? Also, create a platform where you can meet those people. For example, a podcast. Let's say there is someone that you've aspired to connect with that has a multi-million-dollar business, but they won't use your services, right? There's no match there. They're not going to buy a product or service from you, but you have a podcast or you have a blog or you have a newsletter and you want to highlight them. That is an opportunity to create a connection. So sometimes we have to get out of that box and create the platform to create and to network with the people we want to work with.
You're speaking my language. That's exactly how this all started. There were people I knew intentionally I wanted to create space for, share space with, to learn from. I said, what better way? People want to talk about and share what they do. They want to. So let me make a space where they can. And so, yeah, thank you for saying that. That's so true. And don't be afraid to try. It doesn't have to be as formal as this. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just create a space for them to share. I love that, Vanessa. Tell the audience where they can not only learn more about your blog and how you give a spotlight to bosses, but the other work that you're doing. How can they connect with you?
All right. So I wear many hats. My husband and I own a company called Divas in Defense, where we teach self-defense training for women and girls. And that's where I spend most of my time. So that's divasindefense.com and on all social media, Divas in Defense. Pink Boss is my little place in the world where I share all things. So all things about being a boss in life, in motherhood, in business, and in my job. So we are doing a website overhaul. A new website will launch at the end of this month, but it is still up, pinkboss.com. And on all social media, I am the Pink Boss.
I love it. Guys, I'm typing it here so you can see it if you're watching our YouTube live. And hey, if you catch the replay, don't be shy. Drop a comment, and Vanessa, I will come back and address your thoughts, questions, or just you sharing your story on managing and overcoming imposter syndrome. Remember, you're not a fraud. And if you are catching this on audio, thank you so much. Just take a minute, pause for the cause, and hit the subscription button. We're found on all podcast platforms, on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, and more. Don't forget to check out the show notes because boy, Vanessa dropped some gems today. They will be in the show notes as well as in my email list for the activation hour. And then finally, there's many ways you can connect with us. Vanessa is a coach and offers resources in her own right, which you will see in our scroll here. So you can check out all that she offers. At Pink Boss, and then also Divas in Defense, which will drop in the show notes. And then finally, mark your calendars for August 1st, where we're dropping Manager to Coach. Make your shift from manager to coach, a manager's guide to coaching for results. If you manage in any capacity, and not just in work, but if you're managing your household, if you're just managing people in any way, there's a methodology to getting proven results. So check out Shift from Manager to Coach and join my email list to get your free copy of Chapter 1. Guys, you've been phenomenal. Thank you for subscribing. And it will really mean the world to me for you to leave a review and share it with a friend so you can unlearn together. You've been listening to the Activation Hour podcast. I'm your girl, Melissa D, joined by Vanessa Parker. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Vanessa. If you love this episode, please make sure to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and share with a friend. Also, if you really want to get behind the scenes, go now to our YouTube channel at The Activation Hour. The link is found in the show notes for you to actually see my guest live and in person, and to even catch more details of our conversation behind the scenes. Stay connected and join us next time for The Activation Hour, Purpose at Work and in the World.